In this video, we're going to be looking at Chapter 2, Early Globalization, the Atlantic World, 1492 to 1650, and we'll be looking first at the learning objectives. Just a note to students, there will be more videos from me in the discussion this week, so be sure to check those out and respond to the discussion questions and go back to listen to the post by your classmates as well as by me. So discussion is different for week 2. Please pay attention to the instructions there for you. So I broke down the learning objectives by each section, and first we'll look at 2.1, so Chapter 2, the first section. And that's on Portuguese exploration and the Spanish conquest. So at the end of this section, you should be able to describe Portuguese exploration of the Atlantic and Spanish exploration of the Americas, and the importance of these voyages to the developing Atlantic world, and explain the importance of Spanish exploration of the Americas and the expansion of Spain's empire and the development of Spanish Renaissance culture. And just a note, it is at the bottom of the screen, but just to remind you to use these learning objectives to help you focus on the main ideas of the chapter, and you can use that to organize your notes and even get ready for the discussion. In 2.2, the second section of Chapter 2, on religious upheavals in the developing Atlantic world, you'll be able to, 1, explain the changes brought by the Protestant Reformation and how it influenced the development of the Atlantic world, and 2, describe Spain's response to the Protestant Reformation. At the end of section 2.3, challenges to Spain's supremacy, you'll be able to identify regions where the English, French, and Dutch explored and established settlements, describe the differences among the early colonies, and explain the role of the American colonies in European nations' struggles for domination. And in section 2.4, New Worlds in the Americas, Labor, Commerce, and the Columbian Exchange, you'll be able to describe how Europeans solved their labor problems, describe the theory of mercantilism and the process of commodification. These are words that maybe would be helpful to look up, mercantilism and commodification. I don't want to assume anybody knows what that is, but we'll follow up on that later. Analyze the effects of the Columbian Exchange. So all of these topics come up in one way or another in the discussion, and so we'll focus on that rather than direct lectures from me about each thing. So I will be present in the discussion as well, and I'll be looking for your responses as well as adding to other things that you're saying. So be sure that you see all the posts in the discussion for week 2. I'm going to spend a little bit of time giving you an example of ways that you can look at art and other images in the textbook to begin doing an analysis yourself. So, point 1 in Chapter 2, example of what you could do to analyze an image. I want to walk you through this. So this is a woodcut made from the Italian verse translation of the letter Columbus sent to the Spanish court, and that means to King Ferdinand II and Queen Isabella. There is a brief analysis of the image of Christopher Columbus in the textbook, and there it actually emphasizes the Spanish King Ferdinand II and the Arawak people. And those Arawak people are indigenous, or were indigenous, to Hispaniola in 1492, which is present-day Haiti and Dominican Republic. Who is drawn in this picture? So kind of a who and what. So we have King Ferdinand II in the foreground, sitting on the throne, and he's pointing towards the ships. Columbus and his crew. Examine there how large and drawn, there we go. The people of the Arawak people are there on the coast of Hispaniola. What I'd like you to pay attention to here is, and follow up in the discussion. You could do this further in a research project if you wanted to take multiple pieces of art from the textbook and analyze them and go into more detail than what's provided here with some further research. And look at close examination of who's represented, and what that might mean. And so you could start with what impression this makes on you, who is in this picture, and why they're drawn to the scale that they are. So who is important in this picture? You might gather some impressions from your own examination of it. Who do you think is important in this picture? And then what does it represent, like the symbolization of the time and the events that this represents? And what's the significance of those events? Why would this be put together into a woodcut? In other words, why would an artist spend this much time creating this kind of woodcut? And what does it represent? Well, those would just be the beginnings of an analysis if you want to address those questions. And those could be a model for other ways that you could analyze other images from the textbook. Further into the PowerPoint that is shared in the module, you have this timeline starting with 1492 with Columbus landing in Hispaniola and going all the way to 1624. And in another video, I will talk about this Elmina Castle on the west coast of Ghana. And this will be a part of another video about that, as well as this one. So I'm just jumping over to slide 16 in my PowerPoint that are in the textbook that say click and explore. So I think if I do this, you can see, so it'll say click and explore, and then these are links. And if I click on them here, it won't actually take me there. So I'm going to go to a different screen. So I want you to look at these and check them out, because these can be sources that you can include among the primary sources that you'll need for your research project. So the first one is going to have to do with the Protestant Reformation. And so that connects back to the pictures of Martin Luther, Queen Elizabeth, and so on. And then in section 2.3, you have a collection of maps of the Middle Atlantic region to 1850. And that's a collection that the New York Public Library holds. And so if in the textbook, when you click on those links, it will take you to those sources. The medieval source book, that's located at Fordham University, also in New York. And if you click on the red text, that will take you to the source. So this has to do with precursors of the Reformation. And then you can look at the different parts of the Protestant Reformation connected to Martin Luther, John Calvin, and so on. And they're organized based on all of those things in the outline and people. Click on one part, for example, one by Petrarch. So these are Petrarch states. So we click on letter criticizing the Avignon papacy, and what you get is a primary source that has been transcribed. And this is a typed version of the letter from the original source. And so this is actually a letter that Petrarch wrote. And that's on the click and explore items that are in the textbook. And so I'm going to cutting off the screen. So it has to do with how I set up QuickTime. So you don't really have to see all of these in the video. I'm just trying to point out that there are more slides. So you have this image of the portrait of Elizabeth I of England. And then there will be further ones as you go from there on to the end of the chapter. And so point those out that you want to pay attention to those as they come along in the chapter. So we are going to get all the way to looking into some Renaissance depictions of the time that have to do with all of this globalization and migration during this period. So that pretty much will conclude ending with the Columbian Exchange and some of the effects. I don't think we can get into all of them during this class, but again, I welcome you to explore that further in a research project if that's something that you would like to explore further. So that is the end of the presentation, the overview for Chapter 2.